Well, we've been doing an environmental summit every year before the legislative session so that everyone who's going to be working on environmental issues at the Capitol, legislators, advocates, citizens, everyone who's got policies that they want to bring forward to get adopted by the state to protect our land, air, water, wildlife, and more recently energy issues, transportation issues, funding issues. It's very important that everybody get together before the chaos of session so that we can really get some framework and understanding of the larger ethos of what we're trying to accomplish. How do we protect our open spaces? How do we manage our statewide waters for the future? How do we protect our wildlife and have a decent transportation and a good energy policy to help affect climate change? So those are all things that are big goals, big issue areas, so that when legislation comes forward during session in isolation, people understand the context. So this summit is a really key starting point. It is the launch pad for a lot of people to understand what's going to be before all of us, and hopefully get us all together on the same page so we can work together and make some good policy in Connecticut. But the energy around clean and renewable energy, our state energy, comprehensive energy strategy is now out and will be reviewed, and it's going to set in place policies that set goals to help us reach our targets of emission reductions. That's huge. The constitutional amendment to protect open space and open space funding is a big initiative this year. And also, of course, water. Our statewide water management plan will need to be adopted this year. It's going to be coming out to the legislature, and that will generate a lot of debate, discussion, and hopefully good policies. So 3 big things.
Okay, for energy, we have Claire Coleman, an energy and climate attorney for the Connecticut Fund for the Environment, Sarah Bronin, City of Hartford, and Leticia Colon de Mejias, who just recently joined our board. I'm so psyched, and is part of Efficiency for All, an actual entrepreneur in the clean energy economy.
Hi.
My name's J.C. McCauley.
I'm Naisha McCauley, and you're watching accesstv.org.
7 minutes Q&A. Take it away.
Great. Well, that's a hard act to follow. Thank you, Commissioner Klee and Brian, for your leadership.
Oh, yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah, or even hold it. Even holding it.
Okay, great. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today. I'm honored to be here amongst so many incredible longtime climate, energy, environmental activists, leaders, policymakers, lawmakers. We need all the energy that is in this room today to come out this legislative session and help build momentum around climate change and the critical need to act. So thank you. As both the Commissioner and Brian referenced, and you've heard today, we have indeed had a very tough year, both environmentally, nationwide, as well as in Connecticut here. It's been a tough year for our environment, for our climate, and for our budget. I'm hopeful after hearing remarks that we're in a place where we can see a pivot point. As Commissioner Klee referenced last week, the Governor's Council on Climate Change came together and decided to act boldly yet smartly and put us on a path to meet our long-term greenhouse gas emission reduction goals for 2050 by setting a target in 2030, the 45% economy-wide greenhouse gas reduction target. And that's really going to help keep the state on track to meet that longer-term goal. It's needed, and it's hopefully going to help drive the policies that we need to ensure we meet those targets. I think that's a role of mine today, is to talk about one of those policies, which is a renewable portfolio standard. Before I do that, I just want to pause for a minute and say, this is an energy panel. It's a clean energy panel, but it could also be a clean jobs panel. When I'm going to be talking about renewable requirements for the state. Sarah's going to be talking about shared solar. Letitia is going to be talking about important energy efficiency investments. All of these things create jobs and are also good for Connecticut's economy, will help generate revenue we need to help fill that budget gap. So we're all here because we care deeply about our climate and our environment, but we're also helping our economy, and I think that's really critical to keep reminding our lawmakers as they sit down at the table to figure out how do we close the deficit that we still have. This is a part of the solution to that. So one of the key pieces of that is the Renewable Portfolio Standard, which is a wonky, boring term, but really sort of our bread and butter of clean energy policy. The Renewable Portfolio Standard requires our state's utilities to procure a certain percentage of our electric power from renewable sources. So currently in Connecticut in 2017, 15.5% of our electric power came from what's called Class 1 renewable energy, and those are the new technologies like wind and solar that are truly zero carbon that we want to really spur innovation in. I will pause for a minute and say our renewable portfolio standard in Connecticut does rely extensively on biomass, which is not a zero carbon resource. And the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection has proposed to clean up our Class 1 RPS by phasing out biomass, which would allow for more wind and solar resource development. And we think that's a really great thing. We also think we need a stronger, more ambitious RPS even with that cleanup. Because what the RPS does, especially for Class 1 resources, it drives innovation. It says to the investment community, it says to renewable energy developers that it's safe to invest in these products that we need because we're going to have there will be electricity demand. The state is requiring us to procure it. If you build it, we will use it. And that's really critical to sustaining and developing in an orderly, predictable fashion a transition to our clean energy economy. So why is the RPS so important? Because it creates that driver and because it's going to set that path to transition us to the clean energy economy that will then help us meet those greenhouse gas reduction goals, the long-term goals that are already in statute, and the interim goal that hopefully, together with all of your help, we will put into statute this legislative session. So in addition to all the climate benefits, a strong renewable portfolio standard also does bring job benefits to the state and to the region. It helps grow those clean energy jobs. It helps us reduce our dependence on natural gas, which then can avoid those winter price spikes that Commissioner Klee was referencing. And of course, it helps with our climate. And so what we have to do is we have to set this RPS, and then we also have to create policies in the state to ensure that we have the renewable generation to meet that RPS. And that's where Sarah comes in. Community solar is a key policy tool that we need in this state on a full-scale level to help both generate more renewables, create more solar in state, and also ensure we're creating equal access. We're democratizing the clean energy movement. And we've been so appreciative of all the work Sarah's done on this, and I'm really excited to hear her comments. Thank you.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Thanks so much for having me here. And you know, just coming off the last panel, it reminds me of how lucky we are in Connecticut. We can improve so much, but we've been so lucky over the last 8 years that our commitment to clean energy, renewable energy, people like Commissioner Klee, people like Brian Garcia have really led Connecticut to be a leader in a lot of these, a lot of areas that we've been talking about today. So just, you know, I think a moment to reflect on the fact that we've been moving in the right direction, but there's still a little ways to go. And one of the things that I think we have to focus on in the absence of federal leadership on the environment is state and local leadership. And how many people know what the city of Hartford's been doing in its climate action efforts efforts, people who have been participating in the effort. But I want to talk a little bit about that so we can talk about how shared solar fits in. So Hartford now has officially adopted by the City Council, thank you Councilwoman Bermudez and your colleagues, a climate action plan that was developed by a working group of about 30 different stakeholder organizations, individuals who met together for about 16 months to adopt this formal plan. We had help from DEEP, we had help from Lynn Stoddard, we had help from CROG, we had outside help, but we also had a lot of folks in the community, leaders of 5 commissions, a lot of different nonprofit organizations who participated in the development of the plan. Our goals were economic development, public health, and social equity, and the areas that we looked at were energy, food, transportation, waste, water, and land. So today we're focused on energy, but I did want to say that what we've been advocating for at the city is really in the context of a broader effort to address climate change. If anybody wants to see the plan, it's hartford.gov/climate. In the area of energy, we realize that there's a lot of different areas that you have to tackle in order to address the problem. Not just the energy efficiency aspect, which we've just heard a little bit more about, of public and private properties, but increasing renewable energy use, encouraging clean energy vehicles, and increasing energy resiliency, our ability to respond to, in the case of natural disasters. We now have a grant-funded sustainability office that's making a lot of advancing in a lot of these, all of these different areas within energy and the other 5 areas beyond energy. But they wanted for me to talk today about an aspect of Goal 3 in our climate action plan, which is shared solar. So why does the city of Hartford care so much about shared solar? Shared solar is the ability for a group to get together to build a solar array, let's say on one property, and then everybody else to share in that energy that's being produced. For a place like Hartford, not all of our residents live in homes that are conducive to solar. A lot of our homes are pretty narrow. We have pretty small lots, so you might not be able to put a freestanding solar installation. You might not have the income level that's required for an initial investment in solar, although some Green Bank supported programs like Solar for All are helping with that. Or you might be a renter. So in Hartford, we have a very low portion of owner-occupied properties. So all of these factors make many of our residents and many of our properties poor candidates for the kinds of solar programs that you see in the suburbs, in the surrounding towns where you might have higher income and more land. So NREL estimates that about half of households and businesses nationwide can't host solar systems because of these kinds of characteristics. I think that number is probably more in Hartford. If you look at the numbers, over the last 5 years, about 21,000 Connecticut residents installed solar arrays, and only 205 were installed by Hartford residents. And of course, we're one of the largest cities in the state. We contributed $1.8 million more to the Residential Solar Investment Fund than we received in solar rebates that, of course, support these solar tax credit, solar installations during a 3-year period. So that's just during a 3-year period. This is a statistic that CFE has produced, and they've done this for a number of towns. But in Hartford, what we call the solar equity gap is pretty high. So shared solar is something that we're really pushing for, and the City Council again passed a resolution on that. Our Climate Stewardship Council, which I've been working on, also passed a resolution, and it's something that the mayor has prioritized as well. We know that politically it's a tough issue, but we think that the benefits to increasing renewable energy use and increasing our use of renewable energy in Hartford is a really important goal. Just getting back to our broader goals of economic development, public health, and social equity, how does shared solar meet all of those goals? Well, Claire, mentioned this could be the jobs panel. Installation of solar creates local jobs. That's always an important thing, but it also reduces costs for people. It reduces people's energy costs in Connecticut right now anyway. For public health, the more renewable energy we use, the less toxic energy we use, the less emissions. Hartford has one of the highest asthma rates it has the highest asthma rate in the state, probably one of the highest in the country. So we need to get those we need to use cleaner energy so that overall can help be reduced. And then in social equity, again, we can't access, many of our residents cannot access the benefits of solar because of where we live or where we're or our income demographics. But shared solar is a way for people who wouldn't otherwise be able to get solar to be able to buy into a system. So this is really important, an important priority. I should mention one last thing, which is Hartford recently started an energy improvement district, which is a new kind, relatively new kind of political subdivision, or it's a state legislative creation. We're one of the few cities that actually has an energy improvement district, and we're in the process of writing a comprehensive plan for the city for energy issues. We have one component of that plan that's about distributed generation and microgrids, and we have one component of that plan which identifies sites for shared solar. So we are, through this formal body of about 15 entities, including a representative of Eversource, which is, of course, our local utility, we have been planning for and providing for shared solar. So we hope to make it happen. We hope to be a part of that. I know you'll see various representatives of city government at the legislature. You'll probably see citizen activists there as well. So hopefully we can do this together this year. We're planning on it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We are on track.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm here to talk about energy efficiency, although I feel like everyone else has talked about energy efficiency, which actually makes me really happy. It's great to see so many people here today that I don't recognize. It's phenomenal to see an audience full of new advocates for environmental change. This is a very exciting day for me. So what is energy efficiency? Most people don't really understand it as a concept, and many legislators don't know what our award-winning energy efficiency programs actually do. I work in the energy efficiency industry along with 34,000 other people here in Connecticut. We represent insulators, window guys, your HVAC people, the people that do the weatherization of homes. There's lots of people in the energy efficiency industry. So it's the least expensive, most cost-effective way to meet our state's growing energy needs while creating local jobs, reducing energy costs, protecting the environment and human health, and slowing the impacts of climate change. Sounds like a really awesome thing to do. As awesome as it is, some people think it sounds too good to be true. So when people don't understand something, they just often don't care about it. And so I think it's very, very important this year that all of the advocates here in the room work very hard to educate the leaders who make the decisions like the diversion of the Energy Efficiency Fund. So before I talk about the diversion and the impacts, I want to say some really great numbers about what efficiency did in 2016, which was the last report that was available to us. In 2016, this program generated $140 million in net tax revenue. That number is going to be really interesting when we talk about the impacts of the raid. 10 years reduced energy costs of $3.7 billion in Connecticut, $3.7 billion in reduced energy costs. We reduced greenhouse gases, avoided $5.7 billion in avoided healthcare costs through the RGGI initiative. And this was equivalent to taking 319,000 cars off the road. So while transportation is extremely important to reducing carbon emissions, you can also reduce emissions through energy saving things in buildings across our state. We provided a $1.4 billion gross state product increase in 2016. So, despite these positive incomes, the legislature voted for a diversion of funds of about $140 million from the Energy Efficiency Fund. That was separate from the funds that were diverted from the Green Big funds. So the award-winning programs that provide ratepayers direct services to reduce energy in homes and businesses, both, as well as municipalities, were hit. Ultimately, this resulted in economic harm to businesses, families. It will result in economic harm to our state's economy, our energy and environmental goals, and hinders ratepayers' access to energy-saving programs while increasing their overall energy costs at the same time. So I'll say that again. We remove the ability for them to decrease their energy costs and increase their energy costs at the same time. That's pretty serious. I'm a ratepayer. Okay, so what can we do? It's critical for our state leaders to have insight and understanding in the value of the far-reaching economic benefits of efficiency in residential and commercial applications because it is cost-effective and has multiple follow-on benefits. Those follow-on benefits are extremely exciting and important. Even more exciting, I've been doing this work for, 10 years now, and we've done projects all across the state of Connecticut. This year, we did 3 million square feet of multifamily housing, or 50 comprehensive multifamily projects. That means that those buildings that in this case were low-income household buildings received things like insulation, new windows, new mechanical equipment. In some cases, there was health barriers that were removed. So these programs benefit everyone. They benefit market rate customers, which is someone who doesn't qualify for low-income services, and they benefit low-income households as well. All right, so what was the diversion? Someone asked, what's a sweep? The diversion is the sweep. It's where they take the $140 million that was legislatively removed from our energy bills to put into a fund to offer low-cost or subsidized services back to the ratepayers to reduce their consumption. In other words, this resulted in an energy tax on our electric bills. There were no hearings, and there was no vote. Okay, so what does it mean? The losses that are going to occur because of the diversion of energy efficiency funds are the loss of 6,800 jobs in the state of Connecticut, $230 million in lost investment on energy efficiency projects, 5,900 low-income families will not be served this year. And I can tell you, because I work in the industry, it will specifically be oil-heated homes and propane-heated homes that will no longer have access to the services that I described, which reduce their energy costs. I can also tell you that about 60% of Connecticut has oil or propane, and that many of those are working in low-income families. 12,900 homes won't be weatherized in the market rate program. 13,000 people won't have services. Okay, so even though energy efficiency is nationally proven as the most effective and economically sound way to reduce our energy cost, lower air, water pollution, protect the environment, and support human health, as well as generating jobs, and even though weatherization and insulation can reduce our heating and cooling costs by up to 30% per building, which obviously equals a lot of reduced carbon emissions, it seems like there's a gap of understanding between the leaders who make the decisions about what happens with funding and the folks that have the information about what we can do to improve the economics in Connecticut. And I'd love to bridge that gap, and anyone who wants to help me, come on, I got my cards today. In your folder, you're gonna find a little note from Efficiency for All, which has all the economic impacts as well as positive impacts of energy efficiency. And I would encourage you to go on there. And if you go on the website, you'll find lots of case studies that have been done right here in Connecticut by organizations such as UConn, Loomis Chaffee School, Goodwin College, and other big groups that are very interested in reducing carbon waste and energy loss in the state of Connecticut. So forward thinking, what can we do? Okay, so I said a lot of information, some of it is sad and some of it is good. What can we do? I'm always about what is the next step? Where is our action? Because you guys are advocates and some of you are legislators. So what do we want from everyone here? We want to count the non-energy impacts, such as reduced asthma, lost sick days at work, higher air quality. All of these things have to be part of the equation. And currently, they are not counted in the way that we look at how we are doing energy efficiency programs or how we're using energy in Connecticut. And we must stop subsidizing renewables and end subsidies for coal, nuclear, or other investments so that efficiency and solar can be how we generate electricity here in our state. Thank you.
Yes. And I have a bunch of questions, more are welcome. We have a bunch of little cameos and things to go through before lunch. I want to actually take the liberty of devoting a minute and a half to what our organization Clean Water Action is doing. Thank you, Ann. I mean, duh. Because I don't want to go back to the office and go, oh. So we're always like scrambling to do, to respond to what's going on in the legislature. I'm kind of new at this, but I figured out we have developed a sign-on letter that basically addresses, support of many of the good ideas that are here. So the Renewable Portfolio Standard, diversified in-state renewables, attention to shared solar, equitable land use policy, valuing of solar, and of renewables fairly, and so forth. We want not just the usual suspects, we welcome them, but we want every faith leader, business leader, you know, the insurance executive who lives next door to you, you know, we want, we're getting public health folks to sign on so that there's really a kind of sense of unity going into the session and a sense of commitment to basic principles, you know, regardless of the roller coaster of the bill dynamics that always happens. And we are planning a lobby day at some point not too far into the session, and we work with, obviously, the most awesome coalition that Claire keeps hurting. If you represent a statewide advocacy organization, would you just stand up for a second? I'm winging this. Stand up or wave your arms or something. Applause. And pick these people out. And then, again, I'm going to do this at least once more, but legislators are the busiest people in the world, and some of them are in and out of the room. So if you are a legislator, would you stand again so we can recognize you and thank you for being here? And I know that at least Pony Wang and Melissa Gibran have got called into a meeting but wanted us all to know that they had been here and send their regards. Okay, questions. Given that emissions from other states contribute a great deal to air pollution in Connecticut, how can we work across state boundaries to deal with that? Claire, I guess.
I think one great example of regional initiatives that are just starting to gain steam is one to deal with our transportation sector emissions, which we all talked about our electric sector a lot, but our transportation sector actually is the root cause of about 40% of our greenhouse gas emissions here in Connecticut. And we need to do a lot to both ramp up the number of electric vehicles that our communities put on the roads, but also work regionally to figure out what do we do to tackle transportation causing climate emissions. And I think Commissioner Klee referenced the Transportation Climate Initiative is looking to advance a regional solution, a cap and invest type system that follows the regional greenhouse gas initiative model that has been so successful in the electric sector. So that's one great way we can all get engaged regionally.
Thank you. And from this panel, a question we asked before, but what's it going to take to get our energy efficiency jobs back? Leticia? These are kind of obvious who's going to grab them. But.
I think that it is, like, the number one statement is we really need to get out there and advocate for efficiency. We need to help the legislators who are making the decisions about where the funding is going understand that we want efficiency, that it is economically positive, and that it is the best, literally number one cost-effective way to reduce our energy consumption, bump it up against the renewables, and we can meet the goals that we have.
Great. So 2 questions on shared solar. A little basically, how does it work? And what are the objections? Why is it so hard to get it to happen?
Yeah, so how does it work? If anybody wants a legal treatise on this, I wrote an article about it a few years ago. I'm a law professor, but the short version is it's cited on, the solar is cited on one person's property or maybe across multiple people's property that are contiguous, and then the energy is then sold back to the grid, and the end users buy it. Is basically the simplest version. And then what are the objections? I think sometimes utility companies across the country have not been comfortable with this model because it challenges the way that they've traditionally earned money from ratepayers. It's something that is also challenging for how do you compensate utilities for the fact that the generation that they're producing is not actually being purchased by the end user because they're using solar in the times when solar can be produced instead. I did want to also just mention on the transportation question, this is something that is really important. It does have to do a lot with energy. We need across cities and across the state to encourage biking and walking, to have complete streets policies, to invest invest in public transit. In Hartford, we have a requirement that lots, vehicle lots that are 35 cars or more have EV charging stations. We have to create the infrastructure so that when people pass through or when people decide to buy cars, that they actually know that there's an infrastructure here. So we've done the complete streets policy in Hartford too. It's a multi-pronged question, but I think we can also do a lot at home.
Great. Our town's plan to install solar panels on 3 buildings has elicited criticism from residents who say the resources needed to manufacture transport solar panels exceeds the energy the solar panels will generate in 20 years. Can you address this? Wrong.
I don't think so.
Wrong. Basically, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are numbers that the manufacturing costs take a little time to pay back, but negligible compared to the benefits of the panels.
The life cycle benefits far outweigh the cost.
Yep, thank you. Okay. Deeply concerned about the Secretary of Interior's push for offshore drilling on our coasts and this may be, I see Commissioner Klee is still here. What is Connecticut doing about that one?
Fighting hard and fighting back.
Thank you. Sweet. Okay. Renewable portfolio standard, you mentioned the importance. Is something specific planned or anticipated for this session?
You know, I was sitting here kicking myself for saying, I think I skipped over the key part there. So our renewable portfolio standard in Connecticut is set to plateau in 2020. We are currently on a trajectory to increase the renewable requirement by 1.5% annually until 2020. After that, we have no standard, and we need to extend that renewable portfolio standard to at least through 2030 to give that predictable, sustainable development growth that I was talking about earlier. Clean energy advocates have been lobbying around a 50% by 2030 target. That's a 3% annual increase from the 2020 to 2030 period. We've done some analysis through Synapse Energy Economics that actually looked at a slightly less ambitious ramp up of 2.5% annual increases and found that really wasn't enough to meet our climate mandates through the Global Warming Solutions Act. Even if we put 160,000 EVs on the road, 2.5% still isn't enough without other measures to support that. So we think a 3% annual increase and including that cleanup, that critical cleanup of the class 1 so that we're truly driving real zero carbon growth of wind and solar is really critical to keep us on track to meet the climate goals and to get all those jobs and health benefits that you've heard so much about.
Okay, wonderful.
Hi, my name is Wodalise Bermudez of the Connecticut Leave Conservation Voters CHISPA program, and I'm so happy to be here at this environmental summit with our newest board member.
Hi, I'm Sandra DiDonato. I was an intern at the Connecticut League of Conservation Voters last fall, and now I am the newest C3 board member. It's very exciting, and we're here at the summit, 2018 summit.
And we're really excited because while it's been a really challenging year, it was a challenging year last year for the environment, both at the national level and at the state level, there's a lot of work to be done. And what we've seen is that out of such a frustrating year, we have seen new people, new groups, new allies that have come to the surface and have said, we want to do something. We're passionate about the environment and we're here to act. How can we help?
Yeah, so basically our focus is, educating the public, educating, young people to get involved. The CHISPA program is really blossoming across the nation, really, and we're just so happy to put the work in, and we're ready.
And we're really happy to have new people join our effort in creating the future environmental leaders of tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.
I see here that Representative Jonathan Steinberg has not been letting any grass grow under his feet, and we have here a media advisory, 9 states formalized coalition to push carbon pricing legislation, press conference, January 31st, 1 p.m., National Caucus of Environmental Legislators, an interstate coalition to really advance this policy in a coherent way. Do you want to make a comment, or did I nail it?
On the 31st, which we're calling a National Day of Action on Carbon Pricing for 9 states, at 10:30 in the morning, before the start of the veto session at 11, we're going to be having a press event in room 310 of the Capitol. We invite you all to be there. We want to bring real attention to raise awareness of carbon pricing. We hope we can convince the Environment Committee to take up a bill again this year. If not, maybe I can twist the arms of my co-chairs in public health and we can try it there as well. It's thanks to the National Council of Environmental Legislators, we've really built an effective coalition, and this is an opportunity for all of us to believe that a carbon pricing program, in conjunction with our excellent RGGI program, is part of the solution. We can really start to call attention to the actual costs of carbon emitters across the state. As has been said by Commissioner Klee, we're not going to do it alone. It has to be with other states. I imagine Massachusetts is probably the furthest along and maybe the first to pass legislation. The legislation that many states have been talking about all have triggers that require a certain aggregate mass of states and population before they become effective. So again, 10:30 on the 31st, there's a national media call at 1 o'clock, but we'd love to see you in room 310 on the 31st. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm sensing a little momentum. Is anyone sensing a little momentum? Alex from the League of Conservation Voters, you had an announcement?
Yes.
Would you like a microphone for this announcement?
Oh, thank you. So under LCV, we have a CHISPA program. CHISPA in Spanish, it means spark. And a spark that which will ignite is our Clean Buses for Healthy Niños campaign. Just last month, we delivered over thousands of petitions to Governor Malloy's office. And we delivered these petitions with the goal of clean electric buses in mind, eventually becoming the new standard across Connecticut. So next month, we are making an official request to the Department of Energy. We are making an appeal for the Volkswagen Mitigation Fund. Volkswagen, they had to pay millions of dollars to the states. They had to pay millions of dollars to the states because they were lying about their emission standards. Billions, I'm sorry, billions, which is worse because our children's health is at stake. So that's why we have to change the standard, because 1 in 8 children are living in this state with asthma, and over 40% of that 1 in 8 children are black and brown children, and we have to do right by them. The rate we're going at with diesel is not the way of the future. Not if we want a clean one anyway. Does everybody want a clean future? So we're going to make the official submission for these funds, and hopefully we can get at least 5-10 electric vehicles out on the road. Because as Sarah had mentioned, Hartford is one community with some of the lowest pollution, with some of the worst pollution in the country.
And so the other request is a request to all of your school boards and your municipalities who are interested in, losing all the paperwork there. A request is for all the school boards and municipalities to make sure that they have access to these funds as well. So be on the lookout. There's more information through our website at conservationeducation.org and also through our regular CTLCV website as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. setting up for Martha Klein, representing Connecticut Sierra Club and Consumers for Sensible Energy, and you can come have a mic. And while Martha's walking forward, I happen to know that she's putting together a fabulous event, Teach-In for a Livable World, Saturday, Climate Justice Focus, Saturday, February 24th, 12 to 6 at the Elmwood Community Center. I think Diane has some postcards and so forth. And I know, Diane Lintakis, I know that one of the featured subject matter areas is helping our towns plan for 100% renewable energy. And we are excited to be working on that stuff with Mark Scully from People's Action for Clean Energy, who didn't know I was going to recognize him, but we are co-conspirators. So here's Martha.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. I am feeling the momentum, and there's a lot to be enthusiastic about, but I'm going to be a voice of harsh reality. Right now, our electrical system is based 40% from nukes. We get 40% of our energy from nuclear power. 50% of our energy we get from natural gas or fracked methane. Then we get the rest from coal, from trash to energy, which, thank you, Claire, for those comments about trash needing to change that, and about 1% from real, truly clean and renewable energy, that is to say, wind or solar. Burning trash or collecting landfill methane is not a truly clean technology. So we're at a really scary place right now where our emphasis on fossil fuels continues to increase. The state still has a ratepayer subsidized natural gas expansion program in place. Maybe it's going to be considered to reverse that and take it away. But remember that we are all still investing our money on our electric bills to expand the use of natural gas or fracked methane in the state. The pipelines that are being expanded are export pipelines. The Atlantic Bridge, of which Eversource is an investor, is building out to the coast of Maine, where it will go to Canada for overseas export. The impact of liquefied natural gas export on our economy and our climate is going to be horrible. So we need to reverse the frack gas expansion. Look for legislation in this upcoming session. Contact Sierra Club, Consumers for Sensible Energy, and all of our good allies, looking for bills to stop the gas pipeline leaks, which is going to be a critical way to stop the expansion. The leaks are why burning natural gas is terrible for the climate, and as well as legislation to reverse the gas pipeline tax, which is a law. Thank you.
Thank you. Lou Birch, Citizens Campaign for the Environment.
Thank you. Why don't you hold on to that one?
Oh, okay. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, and actually, would you all like to, relax? Yeah.
All right, give it up for our climate and energy panel.
Yes.
So good morning, folks. My name is Lou Birch. I'm the Connecticut Program Director for Citizens Campaign for the Environment. Wanted to start by thanking Lori and the League for inviting me up here to speak for a few moments. Just want to take a minute to talk about one of my priorities for this year. Citizens Campaign for the Environment is going to be hard at work again this year, working to modernize Connecticut's container deposit law, also known as the bottle bill. Okay, I know that a lot of folks have probably heard some discussion about this over the last several months. Connecticut's recycling rate, redemption rate for single-serve beverage containers has fallen in recent years. We're around 50% today. And while this is still better than what we see in states without a container deposit program on the books, we're falling significantly behind our fellow bottle bill states that range from anywhere to 70 to 80% redemption on these containers and above. National recycling data does indicate to us that states that have container deposit laws do 2 to 3 times better on average than states without them. States with a deposit on single-serve bottles and cans can actually cut down on container litter anywhere between 70 to 85%, while cutting down on overall litter in our communities and in our open spaces by as much as 65%. So there is evidence, it's a proven effective program that the container deposit works. And the issue is not whether or not that model is appropriate for recycling beverage containers, but the fact that Connecticut's unique system has not been updated in recent years to address, number one, the growing number of single-serve beverage containers for non-carbonated beverages like juices, teas, the Snapples, Gatorades of the world are not included in this program. But additionally, the finances of this program have not been updated in a meaningful way in over 30 years. In order to make sure that the program is keeping up with the pace of inflation. And so the deposit, including the deposit amount, is simply not enough of an incentive anymore to achieve the recycling rates we once did. And so just to give a little bit of perspective, the state of Michigan, as some of you may know, have a 10-cent deposit on bottles and cans and enjoy upwards of a 90% recycling rate. And so additionally, the handling fees paid to retailers and redemption centers have not been adjusted and remain well below the fair market value paid to their counterparts in other states. So there's some very systematic changes that need to happen here. Reporting, accounting, and enforcement issues also exist, making it difficult for the state agency to maintain oversight over all areas of the program. And the $30 million plus that are generated every year through unclaimed nickels are directed into the general fund as opposed to being kept into the system so that there's actually some money to administrate this important program. And so we're also seeing some issues where beverage distributors are literally squeezing our redemption centers out of business by delaying payments and by requiring arbitrary by-hand counts of all the containers that they collect. So it's an inefficient system. The redemption centers are struggling, and as more and more of those redemption centers close their doors, we need to understand that's going to negatively affect our recycling rate as well. And so I'm just going to wrap up by saying what is needed in Connecticut on the container deposit is a comprehensive fix that expands the bottle bill to include all of those other containers that are not currently covered by the law, improves our state's recycling rates overall, modernizes the finances of the program, and allows a portion of the revenue generated by unclaimed nickels to go back into the system. So again, the point here that I'm trying to make today is that our Connecticut bottle bill is in trouble. It's struggling. It needs attention from the legislature, and we obviously need, the advocacy and the support of the community and the groups that are in this room today in order to help get that done. So, thank you very much.
And is there follow-up information in everyone's packets that they can contact you?
Yes, there is follow-up information both on Citizens Campaign for the Environment's website, which is citizenscampaign.org. You can also find some information about the coalition that we're working with at CT Bottle Bill Works, which is a Facebook page online. Folks can get plenty of information there as well.
Okay, sweet. And CTLCV has been working really hard to get massive amounts of information into your hands. So when you're out of here, make sure you actually protect and delve into that packet, okay? Couple things I was reminded to say. There's an opportunity for video interviews for especially folks representing organizations and initiatives, and that is taking place where? In the back room, okay. So make your way there if you like. The whole thing will be online. I have learned a ton, and I have been so impressed by everybody's both content and discipline. We have some time to talk among ourselves before lunch, and I just want to encourage a couple of themes. What did you hear that's hopeful? What did you hear that's disturbing? What did you hear that's brand new, that just caught your attention? And what did you hear that's actionable? So those and any comments that you have. Ben, you have big voice or microphone?
Oh, I don't think I need a microphone.
All right.
No, okay. There was a lot of talk about this 45% goal in 2030. And while that's better than what we've had and it's an improvement, it seems to come from what's monetarily possible and what's legislatively possible, and it's not based on science or technological possibilities. We have the technology to go to 100% renewable energy and not have any emissions, to reduce our emissions to zero. And yet we set these goals which are not there. And we need to recognize that what's written into law and what's business demanded is not what's scientifically needed. We have an emergency on our hands, and we're treating it like something that has to be dealt with in a few years. We've seen the destruction in Puerto Rico. We've seen the wildfires in California. We've seen the destruction of our coast from Superstorm Sandy, and yet we keep pushing off dealing with this. And I just feel like this 45% number, while an improvement, is just not good enough.
Thank you. And let's just not rush into back and forth, because we've heard the rationales. We've also heard, I think those of us who were at the Governor's Council on Climate Change meeting in the audience heard not a push off, but rather let's build out as fast as possible and let's grapple with what's realistic. And I think we all ought to be about accelerating. Enough. Shut up, Melissa. Other Val.
Yeah, hi. I wanted to bring it back to one of the first panels and the issue of water as a public trust resource. This came under fierce debate and battle at the end stages of the state water plan. And our group, Save Our Water Connecticut, is staunchly in support of the principle being very directly restated in the final version of the water plan, if that means it needs to be amended in the legislature. It's great that so much work was done on the plan, and it encompasses so much that previously hadn't been pulled together about Connecticut's water. But to go backwards and to have our first ever state water plan shy away from actually stating that it's a public resource would feel to us, and I hope to many of you in the room, as sad. So we're hoping that legislators can kind of really look at it just like a trust in a bank. There's a principle, water, that is ours to use, but we don't, the water utilities don't own it, and we don't individually own it. The state administers the trust and gives the principle out to us, but if the trust principle itself is misused or abused, then there is a higher order than the individual owner that needs to address the issue and guard the resource. And we've learned this the hard way in Bloomfield with a major industrial water bottler sneaking into town with no transparency and now being free to transport water out of state without regulation. So thank you.
Thank you for all your work. How many people in this room are new advocates or newly jazzed in a major way, like not jaded old enviros? Or you can, hands up high and proud, okay? So I want to invite you all, like applause. I would like to devote some time to you all, and you don't have to be articulate. You just have to blurt out whatever is on your mind, either why you're here, what you'd like to learn, what you're working on. May I invite you to, I'm not going to put you on the spot, rather I'm going to invite you to step toward the spot. Comments from newbies? Yes.
Hi everyone, my name is Ben Breslaw, and with me are Wawa, how do you say your last name? Gatheru, and Hannah Casey. We're all students from the University of Connecticut, and we'd like to we represent a bunch of different environment-related groups on campus, as well as our internship with the UConn Office of Environmental Policy. And first and foremost, we're just really excited to be here and to hear that there's so much going on in all different fields to pursue renewable energy, land preservation, water preservation. This is incredible to hear. We're happy to talk with people about what UConn can do to help out with that. And we'd also love to talk about what UConn is doing right now. We're in the process of heading a campaign, which will hopefully come to a head next week, to create a new requirement at the university that all students take a course related to environmental sustainability before they graduate. So keep an eye out for information on that. The University Senate will be convening next week.
Thank you. Okay. Are you a new person also, or newish, or newish?
Hi, I'm Heidi, and this is my partner Elizabeth, and we got very activated and motivated by the last election, shall I say? Our name is Conservation Coalition, and we are working to bring together legislative action for a block we're trying to unify all the resistors in the block of Fairfield and then move out from there. And we're trying to make as big as impact with slacktivism, which will be calls and emails, as we can. But I'm the woman of action. I feel extremely passionate with action, and Elizabeth is my detail lady. She's all into it.
So our focus, kind of is two-pronged. We both act kind of locally with our town government, and so we join forces to help with the Sustainable Connecticut program in our town. We happen to live in Greenwich, Connecticut. But we also want to work on state legislature, so that's why being here was very meaningful. Thank you, Lori, for fitting us in. And we're setting up kind of a calling feature so that we can activate just everyday citizens who would like to have a voice. And we've seen a groundswell in it, which is really exciting. But we also feel that now that we've gotten really educated on the topic for your average citizen, that we need to pull in more people, and people are willing to do it now. There's been a big groundswell as people have looked at what's happened with our EPA and our Department of Interior. So great to be here.
Thank you. Other newbies, newish, newly inspired?
Well, I feel maybe there's some even newer folks than me. I didn't get to jump in before. I'm Jeff Korjulak with Connecticut NOFA. I just wanted to remind you all about the importance of growing some of your own food and buying as locally as possible and organically, because lots of research is showing damage to developing mines from commonly used pesticides and all sorts of troubles. Connecticut NOFA also is putting in a bill we've submitted. It's called the Healthy Soils Bill for this short session, and it's intended to help incentivize regenerative agricultural practices in the future, which will help us reduce climate change through capturing carbon dioxide into the soil. So I'm relatively new at Connecticut NOFA, 2.5 years, but I'm a long-term supporter of Connecticut League for Conservation Voters, and I applaud all that's going on here today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. How much time do we have before we should turn to lunch? I've stepped away from my timing thing. Another 5. Sweet. Okay. Let's do you and then you.
Hi, I'm Wawa Gathero, as Ben Bristol just said a couple minutes ago. I'm a sophomore at the University of Connecticut, and I just want to commend everyone in this room, first of all. I had the opportunity to go to the COP23 conference in Bonn, Germany last year in November, and we were able to see how the We Are Still In movement is going strong, and how Connecticut as a state is still, denouncing our federal government's inability to say that climate change is legitimate and is real and is going to be affecting us today and tomorrow. I also want to bring up the importance for us to try to include communities of color, Indigenous people in these conversations, especially since these communities are at the forefront of environmental injustice. And as there's so many influential people in this room, ensuring that we're intentional in the way that we collaborate and work with people from different communities.
Hi, my name is Jacinda. I'm a senior at the Connecticut River Academy High School in East Hartford, right on the Goodwin College campus. And I'm here with my environmental theme coach, Ms. Solis, Victoria, and Karen. I just wanted to say that I appreciate and I'm kind of proud of the climate action plan that has been brought up here for the city of Hartford. And its goal to give access to, clean energy for low-income families, and that's very important for me, living, being a resident of Hartford my whole life. And we are truly at the forefront of environmental injustice. So I just want to commend that, and I appreciate that being brought up as a proposal and idea. So yeah, thank you.
All right, well, excuse me. Let us simply take a moment and just like a couple of breaths and okay, we're through the morning, we heard a lot. And I'm guessing that, everybody is going to be moving toward lunch with, a lot of questions, a lot of topical discussions, a lot of networking. But I hope also with a sense that for every single person in this room, there is some specific thing to be done. And that's not the same as, oh, let's all get involved. It's really more personal and more specific. And I just want to, I always find that when I come out of something like this, my energy level can drop or sustain itself. And one of the things that makes my energy level sustain itself is to say, I know what I'm going to do. I know one thing. So I hope that everyone will just, let your muse, stay active and alive. And, we'll be back after lunch with conversation that is specifically about legislative advocacy, how to, and then engaging your questions and comments at that level. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Brenda Watson. I'm the Acting Director of Operation Fuel, and I'm here today because I'm really interested in hearing all the varying opinions, professional opinions on where Connecticut is going to go in 2018 and beyond in terms of our energy policy and environmental policy, as well as water policy in the state.
Hello, I'm Dr. Gail Ridge. I'm Legislative Chair of the 350CT. We have written a bill in conjunction with the Sierra Club addressing extensive gas leaks in Connecticut. A study done in 2016, it can in fact flag leaks along Main Street in Hartford, and you can see this from 2 or 3 miles above the surface of the city where each leak is. The total loss, just in a brief study of 5 weeks, discovered over 215 homes a day in the center of Hartford losing gas. That's an equivalent of over $330,000 of lost revenue that could be used by the state. And this is just the beginning. This law will address this issue throughout the state. And we are very much appreciative of your support. Thank you.
So welcome to the after lunch portion of the Connecticut League of Conservation Voters Summit. As far as I know, I am still Melissa Everett from Clean Water Action, Clean Water Fund, and I am still, as most of you know, supposed to moderate this thing in a way that moves us forward smoothly and nimbly while making everyone feel completely heard and respected and having a relaxed flow. And not standing here with my phone in my hand, which is tacky. So, is Lou in the room? Yeah, okay. Sorry. You're gonna be on shortly. All right, so this morning we heard a lot of who and what's going on, who's doing stuff. We heard from and met an awful lot of the doers of Connecticut, including Lori Brown from the League of Conservation Voters and her splendid board, who I've gotten to meet a bunch of at lunchtime. Can't do too many shout outs. And this last segment is really about action with a focus on this legislative session. So we all know that we're part of a bigger movement, so we don't have to be slavishly just about the next 3 months, but we do want to be strategic about the next 3 months. Connecticut General Assembly starts February 7th and ends May 9th, I believe. So we're going to have several components here, and including lots of discussion. But just what we've got teed up is Lou Birch, who you heard from earlier from Citizens Campaign for the Environment, talking really like how do you get things done legislatively, what to expect. And Gail Ridge from 350 Ridge, Gail Ridge, my bad, from 350 Connecticut, which is a pretty dynamic group of people. And Ann Hulick, our state director with Clean Water Action. Ann will be, there's great. So Lou's going to talk about getting things done legislatively. Ann has been coordinating for a long time the Coalition for a Safe and Healthy Connecticut, which gets things done, and she's going to just share some case material on some successful toxics reduction campaigns. And then Gail is going to facilitate some conversation with legislators, and we'll hear from you on questions, things you want to know, whatever. Lou.
Thank you.
Take it away.
All right, thank you, Melissa. So, as Melissa said, I want to just start by giving a really brief overview of kind of like the most important, thank you, Jonathan, kind of the most important things to know for new advocates that are working on, working on the legislative side in Hartford. It's a few things that you kind of have to have in your quiver when you're going up to the General Assembly with respects to how some of the committees work, what some of the deadlines are, that kind of thing. And so, one of the first things I want to talk about is the public hearing process. So public hearings are held in the beginning of the session. It's an opportunity for the legislature to, the various committees of cognizance, to take comment from the community, from the experts, as well as from the public on these various issues. And this is really the primary opportunity that the public and your groups and all of your members really have to get their voice heard on these types of issues. And so this is something that needs to be highlighted in bold on everybody's calendar. And let folks have their voices heard, let legislators see the passion behind their constituency and really make an impression. Public comment at the public hearing is limited to 3 minutes per person, no matter how many issues you're testifying on. And so there's times when, 3 or 4 of my issues are on the same agenda for a public hearing. I only have 3 minutes to talk about all of them. So it's really, really important at that time to prioritize the comments that you want to make, to summarize those comments to the best of your ability, but to keep in mind that your written testimony can cover much greater level of detail on different issues. It can be submitted after the public comment period, and I think the legislators will agree that this is going to be accessible to members right up until that time in which it's time for them to vote on these issues. So your written comments are really going to be the kind of your spoken testimony is your opportunity to kind of make a in-person impression, but the written comments are going to be the lasting impression that's on the record for different issues that you're working on. The committees of cognizance are really, really important. Advocates are going to need to establish exactly who the relevant committees for each of these issues are before the session, and then begin to focus first on the leadership of those committees in terms of being able to get the support to get your legislation introduced, get it out of committee, and get it before the full body of the General Assembly. Okay. Some other important details to keep in mind: odd number years are long session, early January to early June for the legislature. This is also the year that the budget for the next biennium is going to be negotiated and passed. Also, individual members are able to introduce legislation during the long session. Okay, so those are the years, right, 2017, 2019. These are the years that you really have an opportunity to identify a champion who might be your legislator, might be another legislator in your area that's passionate about these issues, that has has a concern with their constituents, and you can actually get individual legislators to introduce that bill. Even number years like the one that we're in now are short sessions, runs from early February to early May. Midterm budget adjustments are made during the short session, but all legislation introduced this year has to be done through the committee process. So this is one of those years, especially where it's going to be very, very important for your group to identify the committee of cognizance, the chairs for that committee, and then get your requests in to go and meet with those leadership folks as early as you can. Okay. And to know the committee deadlines. Committees are usually divided into about 2 different tracks for alternating schedules. Committee bill deadlines, raised bill deadlines, and joint favorable deadlines can be found online. The schedule actually looks something like this. Okay, and this can be found on the Connecticut General Assembly website. It's got all the different committees and the deadlines that you have to have things done by. So just to give you an idea, okay, the proposed bill deadline, this is going to be very, very general statement of intent of what the committee wants to do. The deadline for that is going to be February 9th. It's just a few days after the start of the legislative session. Then you have your committee bill deadline, which is actually going to be February 22nd. Okay, and so that's the time that the committee has to actually get out more fleshed out versions of those proposals. They have until February 22nd. So in the short legislative session, it's a pretty short time window, and you have to act pretty quickly. Okay, and then, of course, the joint favorable deadline, which is the deadline by which those bills have to be voted favorably out of those committees in order to be considered by the full General Assembly, is actually going to be March 15th of this year. Okay, you can find this information, and this is something that you folks might want to write down, but you can find this information as well as a number of other resources on the CGA website. That's cga.ct.gov. Okay, and that's, again, Connecticut General Assembly is what CGA stands for. And this is the online portal. It's a one-stop shop for schedules, committee information, including membership, the deadlines, the schedules we talked about, public hearing testimony can be viewed there, and as well as basic and advanced legislative document searches. So if your group is interested in a particular issue and you want to see if there's legislation that's already been introduced, you can search in your relevant terms and that kind of thing, figure out if there's anything out there. And advocates can also sign up for bill tracking so that they can get notification whenever those bills have been acted upon. It's the single most important resource on the web for advocacy groups in Connecticut. Definitely explore it, get to know its features, and refer to it often for updates and for the legislative calendar. And so there's a few other things that my colleagues are going to want to talk about in terms of staying tuned in with the groups. I'm not sure who's going to take a second. Gail, are you next? So I'll pass it off to Gail. Thank you.
Shall I go second? Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I have a question. How many languages are spoken in Connecticut? 148. All right, how many continents does the soils of Connecticut represent? 3. Africa, there's parts of Africa here, there's parts of the Eurasia continent and North American continent. We may be a tiny state, but my God, we are very diverse, both culturally, geographically, environmentally. And, you know, when I was asked to step up to speak to you, I was thinking about this diversity. And diversity needs careful management of communication. You know, we all come to the table with different backgrounds, different viewpoints, different outlooks, different belief systems. And when we communicate among ourselves, it's important that when you are addressing somebody, you're certain that what you're saying is actually being received by the person in the same manner. So I think in politically lively environments such as we have here in Connecticut, which is, you know, vital, it's something that you need to consider. I'm originally from dear old England, as you can hear from the accent, and etiquette is very important. Politeness, consideration of people's time is a lubricant in which you can exchange information very quickly and very succinctly and very easily if it's appropriately managed. So I think the ability to communicate is extremely important, and the consideration of your listener is also very important. As far as a legislator is concerned, I may be guessing in this, but I think basically a legislator's life, and we have several legislators here in the room who can certainly refute what I'm going to say or bounce with this, is that it's a reactive, proactive environment in very tight time frames. And so as a citizen, you need to consider that a legislator, the last thing they want to hear is an essay or a soapbox speech. They want to hear the bullet points. And if it is something that they can work with, then the legislator will stop you and say, okay, let's sit down and talk about this. Now, we have a couple of legislators here. Jonathan, do you agree with the life of a legislator? What is it? What is life like?
So much in your head. You're experts, you know your communities, you know your causes, and you can actually become totally frustrated and not use that time effectively. Now, I'm not saying that you have to dumb it down to a third grade level to get through to a legislator, but it's a good idea along the lines of what you say is think about what are the key salient points you want a legislator to take away. Yeah, honestly, sometimes we're busy checking on our phones or our computers, other things. What's going to make me suddenly turn my head up and pay attention to what you have to say? The 3 minutes of testimony is only the beginning of the engagement with the committee if you're effective. I've seen somebody give a 3-minute speech which is so effective in piquing the interest of legislators from both sides of the aisle. That person's up there for the better part of an hour. That's being effective. What you want to have in your testimony is you want to seed it with things that are galvanizing, that are fresh, that are data-driven, that tell stories about people. You need to use that 3 minutes, not necessarily to tell the whole story, but to engage the legislative members to the point where they care enough to want to keep talking with you until they get the answers that they want. So, yeah, we're distracted. We're in and out of there. We're often in committee meetings in 2 different rooms at the same time. Sometimes we're eating lunch. We're human beings. But if you understand human behavior, the basic levers of getting somebody's attention actually work with legislators as well.
Let me just add one thing from my, thank you, Jonathan. That was perfect. And just from my own personal experience and preference is you might not want to lobby legislators when they're in the bathroom or in the cafeteria. Just my own.
I also feel you need to know yourself well when you're preparing your elevator speech of 3 minutes. Ballpark number of words is 300 words. And rehearse them in front of a mirror and speak at your comfortable rate of speech. I've been to testimony situations in Hartford, and you can clearly see somebody who is literally packing as many words as they can into 3 minutes, and it becomes this breathless blur of information. They're just sort of like a machine gun. You don't want that. You want to deliver your comments and thoughts carefully and slowly so that people have time to digest it. So never rush your speech. Would you agree with that? Yeah. You appreciate time when people enunciate and bring their thoughts in a condensed form. Yes. Okay, Anne, what about you? Do you want to add?
Well, I just want to back up and just ask you all again who is new to this event today. Oh, so yeah, so many of you. I was sitting more up front, so I couldn't see how many of you were new, but I see a lot of my friends and colleagues that I work with, but I'm so thrilled to meet all of you who are excited and want to get engaged. So I really applaud you. And so I was just asked to speak a little bit about how to run effective campaigns. So a lot of my colleagues, I'm not the only one that runs successful coalitions in the state. We all do. I work closely with Lou and all of the other advocates in the room. But what I want to spend a few minutes on is maybe give you all some tips who haven't been involved in this kind of work before that might be helpful to you so that you can continue to work and do even more on the issues that you care about in this upcoming legislative session and beyond, quite frankly. Because oftentimes campaigns don't win in the first year, or the first 2 years or 3 years. But what's important is that you're building up your group's issue in a credible and fact-based manner and educating policymakers and shaping policy going forward. So what I've learned over the years in working with coalitions is working with diverse groups and partners that all care about a particular issue. So I'll just pick one that we worked on, many of you in this room, which was BPA. Connecticut was one of the first states to ban, was the first state to ban bisphenol A, a very toxic chemical, from baby bottles, sippy cups, and other recyclable containers, as well as infant formula containers. And how did we get that done? We had a very large group of advocates, so people from all walks of life that cared about this issue. I was really pleased, and I say this all the time, that our coalition was comprised of every group from Planned Parenthood to the Archdiocese in Hartford. So this was an issue that people just really cared about. It wasn't about party lines or anything. It was an issue about public health. And many of the issues that we talked about this morning in terms of the environment and climate change are really about public health when you think about it. Climate change is the #1 most pressing public health issue of our time. So think about the ways that you can really galvanize your advocates and other groups and get them involved. The legislators, and what Jonathan and Gail and Lou said was so right on. The legislators are really, really busy, and they deal all day, every day with professional lobbyists that are lobbying them for a variety of issues that they're hired by their clients to get passed. The benefits that you all bring to this effort and to campaigns, I think, is so important. And it's that you are, regular citizens, people out there, students, people affected by the issues that you mentioned, and you really care and are experts in talking about how these issues affect you and why you want to advance policy. So what you bring to the lobbying effort and to a campaign is real. You're not hired lobbyists. You are people that passionately care about the issue. And I think Jonathan would agree with me that that is really powerful when you can take your time to come up to the Capitol or call your legislator and meet with them and talk about the issues and why a policy that you're advancing is important, has real weight. And that's what we were successful in doing with the BPA ban. We mobilized advocates from all different sectors, from all different backgrounds, from all different labor groups, faith-based groups, environmentalists, public health advocates, to talk about why they were concerned about exposure to BPA. And we used a lot of tactics to gain their attention. So always coming, again, I think Jonathan said this, with science, with research. Commissioner Klee mentioned that this morning. I'm a nurse by background. We really rely on the science and the evidence. And if you can speak credibly to that, you know more oftentimes than the legislators do about the issue that you care about. So use your expertise and your knowledge of the science and the facts to educate people that can help to make the change. The other thing that I think was really helpful in the BPA campaign was we used a lot of media. So we had a lot of events throughout the course of the legislative session. And all of the groups in this room do this all the time. We hold press events. But again, what grassroots groups like yourselves can do, and it's really, really powerful, is get your colleagues together, get your other UConn students together, hold an event, and we can all help you with this, where we can get some press there, where we can help you to elevate your issue and hopefully get it into the news or the printed media or the television or whatever, to highlight and broaden it. So we did a lot of that, and we made them fun. We were very concerned about BPA, so we brought in kids, we brought in moms, we brought in, people with their kids who could really testify and speak to why they were concerned. We brought in nurses and physicians, so all different groups that could speak about why this was such an important policy issue. And then also using media, got our advocates to write quick letters to the editor. Susan, I'm looking at you because she was super helpful with this. Oftentimes we can help you ghostwrite them or teach you how to do that. But getting your issue out there into the printed media, again, just helps others get involved and get engaged. And certainly we have the advent of social media now, and I think there's great opportunities with social media, obviously. It really helps you to spread the word and get people engaged, and you know way more about this than I do. I mean, I use it, but you're way better at it than I am, certainly. But there is a very important role for social media as a tool, but it should never take the place, I think, and please correct me, Jonathan, and others if I'm wrong about. Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't see you there. If I'm wrong about this, but I think a personal touch, a call from you all as new advocates to your legislator and say, can I meet with you for 5 minutes and talk to you about why I care about this issue, is more effective than a pre-filled out action alert. Is that right? Would you, please, please.
Oh, wait, I got one right here. Thanks, Lou. Hi, everyone. I'm Kristen McCarthy-Vahey. I represent Fairfield, and I am sorry I missed earlier. Mary Hogue, who is from Fairfield, has promised to catch me up. But as I'm sitting here, you probably didn't see me because I had my head in the phone texting about a 2 o'clock meeting that I have to run back. And how many of you have already lobbied in the Legislative Office building before? So many of you, and there are a bunch of you who haven't. I would concur. I say when we come to the legislature, we almost have to learn how to be rude or to do things that my mother taught me never to do, which is when someone's talking to me, to hold my phone and be texting someone else, or while someone's presenting that I'm sending texts and then leaving early after coming late, things like that. But yes, I think maybe not a 3rd grade level, 4th grade maybe for information. You almost always do know more, and I see other representatives, Mary Mashinsky and Adam Dunsby, and Rep. Reyes, there he is over there. But I do think the personal connection, the sense of, clear outline of points, but also having that one-on-one relationship. I often tell people, if you're a strong advocate on an issue, your legislator should know who you are, and they should know you. And in other words, in Fairfield, I know on these issues, I'm going to call Mary, because Mary's amazing, but Mary also has developed that relationship. She's been a leader. She's been a source of information that we can count on, and as an advocate, I think that's really important, is to literally develop that personal relationship.
Thank you so much. I couldn't agree with that more, and I think as you all being new to this kind of work, that personal relationship is so important. Again, you may not get something passed in the first year, but if you're developing a relationship with your legislator and educating them about the issues that you care about, and also letting them get to know you as an advocate, as a citizen, as their constituent, as a nurse, as a student, as a, whoever you are. I think that cannot be underestimated, and that's my only concern with social media, that we rely on that a lot, and it's a great tool, but don't let that take over the other very important piece. Let me see. Is there anything else? I think that's, I would say that with the BPA campaign, utilizing all those things and just expanding, pulling in people to that campaign, educating them on how to lobby. When they come up to the Capitol, how do you pull a legislator aside and talk to them? All of us here want to help you to do that and get real comfortable with that. I know when I first started, and I was much older, I'll say in midlife, I was a nurse for many, many years, and had no problem at all calling a neurosurgeon or a cardiovascular surgeon and saying, hey, my patient needs this, and I need you to do this right now. But when I got in front of a legislator, I was intimidated. And then I thought, well, why? Because you have the skills to advocate, because you know the issue, as they all said, often better than they do, because they have so much on their plate. So trust yourself, trust your knowledge. Thank you for being engaged and here today, and reach out to any of us to help you with anything along the way. We work on our issues, but we want, we are all in this together. So I'll just leave it at that.
Beautiful, thank you. Thanks, everybody. And I was wondering if Anne would talk about all the plastic ducks and colorful posters and toys and things that I always walk into the office and go, now what's that one about? But just to say that It's partly a game of attracting attention in an elegant manner and in an unexpected manner. One line.
Yeah, we had part of our theme for the BPA was plastic ducks, kind of the iconic children's toy that we know are made with these toxic chemicals. And Lou and Susan will remember these well. So,
boxes and boxes of plastic
so
ducks.
we had lots of plastic toy ducks, and rubber ducks, yeah, thank you. And it just became a visual theme. Like if I had a duck, or if I was testifying, I'd put the duck, we'd all put our ducks on the thing.
In a row.
Yeah. And it just became like a talking point, right?
And then people inevitably are like, what's in the duck? And you're like, well, we don't know. That's the problem.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to bring attention to.
Right.
So the visuals can help sometimes in that respect as
And
well.
I just have to put in a plug for our former Senator President Pro Tem Donald Williams, and he told me that, he told all of us that at one point, that kind of street theater, or that kind of symbol of your campaign becomes a talking point and a helpful tool. So I thought, we didn't do too bad then. We did pretty good, right? So,
there you are.
Yeah.
Okay,
so,
thank
and the bill passed, first in the country, so.
Okay. All right. All right, we have a half hour left in our formal time together. So really, you have a consulting firm here. And you should take greedy advantage. Not just abstract questions, like what do you think about? What do you need for each person in this room to just rock for the next 3 months? What kind of help do you need? What kind of questions? What kind of professional development? What kind of support? Let's hear from as many of you as possible. Yeah. And say your name, please, and shout out.
Talking about public hearings, and the public hearing format has to change radically. And we should make sure as a group it does change. This idea that the legislature speak first has to go. These guys and ladies have opportunity to talk to those people in front of you at work on work time. Individual citizens are there on their own time, not getting paid. We have to stop the lobbyists from speaking at public hearing number 2. They are on paid time and they are not really the public. We have to stop this thing of chairmen having their prize speakers stay up there for an hour while 25 people that are waiting to speak end up leaving because it's 3 hours later. That practice has to stop. We have to stop the practice of pre-sign-ups. Because that lets the lobbyists sign up first, and well, maybe let's...
Oh no, we can't stop that. I like that. Sorry.
And I want to say, don't be shy of any of you about changing how this system works.
Okay, thank you.
There used to be a system where you could go into a public hearing and there'd be 8 or 9 lobbyists signed up on one side of an issue. People went to leadership, get a change. And leadership said, no, it's chairman can decide. And guess what? I went around that building ripping up the sign-up sheets. And that's the only way it changed.
Okay, thank you. Next.
My question is, how do you get legislators to really care about an issue that they have no idea about? And how do you get someone to really feel passionate and enthusiastic about supporting something when, at the end of the day, people don't know what they don't know? And just for example, right, so today, and I live in Hartford, as I was pulling into the overflow parking here, and then I was walking back and I was looking down and I was like, oh man, there's so much trash on the floor. Oh my God, that's horrible. But as someone who lives in Hartford, that's not what my city represents to me. And I care deeply about my city. And so the thing that immediately came to mind was, I hope that the folks who are attending the summit don't think that that's all of Hartford, because that is not reflective of who we are as a community. And there's a lot of love for the city, and there's a lot of work to be done. And just because there's litter on the floor. But with that mental image, people might not know what they don't know. And so how do we get people to really consider a topic when they might not know enough about it, even when at times, so for instance, if it's a topic, I'm just going to throw another idea out there, when it's a bill that that's specifically for cities and not necessarily for other towns, how do we get other legislators to really feel invested or to consider what you have to say?
So let us, you guys go ahead, but then I'm guessing there's some wisdom in the crowd on that as well. Anyone comment?
Who's going to take this one?
So thank you, Will. At least I'm going to take a step back and actually add a wrinkle to your question, because I think that you've hit on a really important issue here that we're dealing with more and more, especially because of the fact that many of us in the room are science-based organizations, and we're living in a political universe where it seems that fewer and fewer of our elected officials actually believe in science. So the question that we've kind of been grappling with over the last year to 2 years, as we've seen things changing, is how do we get through to the other side, right, as well as the usual suspects? And I think that a big part of this comes back to the discussion we had a little bit earlier about building those personal relationships with those legislators. Because I've found, particularly when you're talking to a legislator that may have historically been on the other side of an issue from you, that typically, you have to kind of put yourself in their shoes. They get a lot of folks that come through their doors that ask them for things, right? And that say, well, this is our issue, we want you to work on this. And sometimes we get upset and we get frustrated at them when they don't agree with us. And so one of the things that I think is really valuable in terms of building relationships with those legislators and helping them and getting them to take a minute to allow you to explain your issue usually starts with, again, building that personal relationship. So as opposed to, hi, my name is Lou, I'm your constituent, and I'm here to ask you for X, Y, and Z, you may want to start out by saying a little bit about your personal story. What is it that motivates you to do this work? What is it that brought you up to Hartford in the first place? You might then want to talk about an issue that you and that legislator have in common, right? And so you're not creating an adversarial dynamic, and this might go a little bit against what we were talking about before about keeping it short and to the point, but you're talking about building relationships with new legislators here. And another thing that I think can be really useful is to also include in that conversation, you've heard my priorities, now can you tell me a little bit about what are some of the things that you care about, right? So now you're creating a two-way conversation as opposed to just this dynamic where I'm here to ask you for something. So I think that that's very valuable as well.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I
think a couple of points. I want to just crowdsource a little bit. Mary?
Yeah, I have to be candid and say that the number one influence on the legislator is their own constituents. So ideally, you'd say, I'm from your district, here's what I want you to do. And that's the number one most powerful influence. Now, if you're an urban legislator in an urban district and you're outvoted by the suburban districts, which is the case in Connecticut, then you need a larger coalition that reaches into the suburbs. For example, if it's a public health issue, you can coalition with church groups. They will have a social conscience, and you'll be able to recruit some of them from suburbia to help you present your issue, simply because of human decency between the coalition members. So always try to think of how you could broaden your coalition so that you're reaching out further into the state of Connecticut. And that's hard for people to do. When I first was an activist before I was a legislator, I had to learn how to work with coalitions. And coalitions, you respect what each member of the coalition is working on, and you have to give and take with them. So they may say, I'll help you with your bill this year, but next year, would you help us pass this issue that's important to us? We're working on opioids, or we're working on something else. And will you help us next year on our issue? And that's how it works. You give and take with members of your coalition. If they may say, I want you to come to a press conference and stand with me, you don't even have to say anything. Just stand with me while we do our press conference as a coalition member, and then you do that. So then you're much more powerful because now you're a bigger organization. you can work the Senate and the House. You can work more than one legislative district. So coalition building is critical. And I also want to, for the previous question, I want to chime in that street theater is wonderful. And I use it myself. And a little bit of street theater goes a long way. You can get on TV, on the nightly news with your issue, with just a little creativity and a 30-second message.
And actually, I want to take the liberty of just a couple of real quick observations. I always thought that I was enlightened as a European Caucasian person about racial issues, but the moment that I really went holy moly in terms of racial issues was when I was involved in an education campaign where I was invited to do a speaking tour hosted by historically black colleges and universities in the South, where I was in a bunch of big auditoriums and I was the only white person in the room. And it was like, And I think direct experience that whenever you can not just be telling, but showing, one of the ways that just the basic issue of waste and pollution was brought forward, by our movement like a generation ago. Remember the dumpster dive? You actually go out in a parking lot, empty a dumpster, and see what's in it. AIDS as an issue was so invisible. Remember the AIDS quilt, Vietnam Wall? I mean, all of the ways of taking the issues symbolically and viscerally and putting them into public spaces and, you have to build a relationship, but take your legislator on a walk. I mean, there's got to be walking tours of Hartford that show the heart of Hartford and the heart and soul of Hartford and, get people not bothering to think about the trash because they're so much more important. Mary.
So I live in Hartford, and I've worked on the North Branch of the Park River for about 10 years, and have had a hard time just getting funding for that site-specific project, which is actually a very doable project. And so I think some of the ways that really could help transform the movement of this in the state, in the LOB, right, is to bring things home to districts. And for instance, we have a lot of state properties just along the North Branch that are UConn Law School is there, or CSCU, the Connecticut State Colleges and Universities property, and what we've seen at UConn stores where they had the LEED rating system and how transformative the green infrastructure has been on their campus, but they're still working on the maintenance issues. So I think if the legislators and the lobbyists would just also remind and kind of push for those changes on state property, I think that would be a good thing. And also just keep in mind that there's people working on things locally that may not be a statewide program, and you could just say, hey, I know Mary, she's in your district, and the North Branch is worth doing. So thanks.
Thank you. Great. Let's see. We're going to bias toward newbies.
We are trying to get citizens to make phone calls, so a little different than a group advocating for legislature. But we'd like to advocate from a citizen level. So I had a question for the representatives. On the national level, we've been calling our senators and congressmen, and they tell us that that's the best thing for us as their citizens to do. Is it the same for the state reps? I mean, we would like to meet with them, but not everyone we ask to make phone calls is going to want to meet with their rep. So we were going to suggest that they make a phone call, name, address. I'm in your district. This is what I think. So I get that it's personal, but can it work? Is it effective for you guys if someone from your district calls you and says, I would like you to vote on this bill, and this is why?
Assemble comments we get from constituents, and now you're putting the pressure on the aide, who actually in the House may be working for 4 other members, to capture exactly what you said, get it on paper, and get it in front of me. If I get an email, if I get a letter, which is even more personal sometimes, then I'm going to have it in front of me and I'm going to probably spend more time on it. I'll tell you, sometimes phone calls end up in the ether or on the voicemail, and I don't get them until maybe well after they're all that useful. So I don't find that phone calls are all that helpful.
Great, thank you, Mayor.
I think the email is probably the best because when we're sitting in the hearings or the committee meetings or in the chamber, we're also reading our emails simultaneously. So we are. No, I'm not. We're doing like 5 things at once. So. Yeah, they have more staff than we do. We're sharing, a sixth of a staff person. So the emails are good, and you can send them directly to us. And then when we go into debate, we can say, I got 40 emails on this, overwhelming support from my district.
Thank you. Okay. Did you want to do a quick?
I'll just do one quick. I think that actually I'm Melissa Schlag. I work for Connecticut Fund for the Environment, Save the Sound, in the communications department, and I'm also a selectman in the town of Haddam. But one thing I think that summarizes everything that you've all said is the rule in politics is touch somebody 7 times and they'll vote for you. That's the same thing I think with lobbying. Touch them 7 times, whether it's a phone call, an email, a text, in person, or a personal letter. I think all of that has to be done in order for them to really hear you and understand you. And I'm also in charge of taking a 5 or 6 page legal brief and condensing that down into a fact sheet. I think that's also important when you're lobbying your legislator. Give them something colorful with some graphs and some numbers, not a lot of words, because they get stacks and stacks every session that they have to wade through. And if yours is interesting looking, they're going to read it. So that's my advice.
Great point. Thank you, Melissa.
Okay. What else do you need from the consulting firm?
The Brain Trust.
The Brain Trust. It really is awesome. Let's see. Who hasn't?
Alex has a question. I don't think he spoke.
Okay. Well, Ben.
Ben?
Then I'll come back to you.
I don't know if I need it, but just something I wanted to mention that hasn't been mentioned is that the trend in Connecticut is everything gets done on the last day. And it's super frustrating because, I don't know, maybe I'm misrepresenting and they can correct me if I'm wrong, but like very few legislative things get voted on and passed except for the last day of the session. And a lot of things run out of time, which is unfortunate, and like we should find a way to change that. But I just want to manage expectations here that if we're pushing for certain legislation, you have to keep on it because it's not done until the last day of the session in most cases.
And you have to have reliable sources of information about where things are moving, and I find that really hard because all the reliable sources are scrambling themselves. Did you have a question or a comment?
Let me just add one thing before you go on. And I agree with everything that Ben said, and I would also just ask people to manage expectations in terms of the time that some of these issues take. Okay, Ben just hit on a very important issue, is that some of this stuff, high priorities that the leadership folks, they want to do, that stuff is going to get done. It's going to be the more controversial issues. It's going to be some of the environmental issues that may not have broad-based support on the whole legislature that are going to get pushed further and further back. And so you have to understand, while you are investing a lot of your personal time and energy into these campaigns, some of these big ticket issues don't take one legislative session to affect change. And so sometimes you have to take the long view as well. Did you have something you wanted to add to that, Gail?
Yeah, basically, in a nutshell, persistence. And also, when you're working with legislators, speak with them, not at them. I'm a scientist. My craft is language and words. And we can worry a single word for the hours to, what does this mean? Should it mean this? Should it mean that? So, I think it's extremely important that you always bear that in mind, that you're working with somebody and not at them, and I think they would appreciate that.
I just want to ask the legislators if there's anything that we have not yet asked that we should. So what advice do you maybe have that we should know?
And legislators, I know Jonathan, Mary, who else is still in the room? I'm sorry. Great. A quiet legislator, would you like?
I walked in late, so I don't have an answer to that question. So I don't know what you asked before I got
Oh, just basically working the legislature effectively during the session. You know, what makes you happy when a constituent does it? What makes you crazy when a constituent does it? I'll get back to us.
It made me crazy. I mean, I'll just, since I'm being asked to go some general comments, which echo what Representative Mashinsky said, and I think the other representatives here. I mean, the first best path is always to approach a legislature if you're a constituent. I mean, when I get an email from a constituent, I almost always respond. It's very rare that I don't find the time to respond, or the tone is such that it doesn't seem warranted. If I get an email from someone who's other side of the state, I typically don't, because my thought is, well, they have a representative or a state senator. They really should go to them first and see. So, and that's the point goes to your question too, and I agree with Representative Steinberg to a degree that just general phone calls probably don't have a huge impact. I should also point out too, I think I'm the most junior person. I've been in the legislature just over a year, so all these guys know a lot more than me. But I think I would be hard-pressed to believe that any legislature would ever turn down a request from a constituent for a meeting. So even if you're working with a group, an interest group that has a particular cause in mind, if you have someone from that group who is in the legislature district who you would like to speak with or get access to, I think that the smart thing to do is trying to get that constituent to set up a meeting and then try and bring more people. I think working through the constituents, I mean, we all get here because we're elected. There's certain realities about being here and being legislature. So everyone wants to do what they can for their constituents, and that's really, 60, 80% of the job is serving your constituents. So that's my recommendation and my overall comments for my late arrival. Thank you.
Thank you kindly. Mark.
There are so many issues that this group is interested in pursuing, and we have a legislative session coming up, and I feel like we sometimes go at the legislature scattershot. And I don't know if there's a simple answer to this, but how do we coordinate better on the couple of bills the couple of issues we might want to push?
You know what? So are people from the three panels still here? Okay, you were water, correct? Okay, anybody from the land, Margaret's here, anybody from the land panel still here? Karen, okay, wonderful. And sorry if I'm like completely disoriented and not seeing you right in front of my eyes. So, and energy, yeah, exactly. I mean, so would we say clearly renewable portfolio standard? David, something about land use and siting, or no, we don't know, who knows? There is a list of energy bill interests that I think is in your packet, that just a framework and bills that have been in and out over the last couple of years with some contact people from the various organizations. Water, just quick summary.
Water advocates, as you could tell from the panel, are pretty tight, and we're used to working together, working with Lou and Ann. And I'm with Rivers Alliance of Connecticut. Our email is on our website. Even my cell phone number is on our website. We also have a helpline, which please don't use unless it's a real emergency before 5 a.m. But we really will, and I think most of the people here, if you have a water issue, we will try, if it needs a policy or legislative, we will try to be sure your voice gets heard in the right place. It might be CEQ, it might be with your legislature, it might be with the agency, and we typically talk and interact and work together and can tell you which bills have momentum and which don't, and give you an idea of your possible success or not. So water is, we're very solid. We're not a liquid, we're solid.
They're in the flow. Hold up that handout.
So there is a list of organizations working on water issues on this flyer here that is in your packet. So if there are issues that you have an interest in, you can contact your local water organization. And Rivers Alliance is the primary advocacy organization working on solely water here in Connecticut. So.
Great. And is the water and public trust and validation of, or adoption of the state water plan likely to be, do you think, a priority? In a big way?
Melissa, can I
yes.
I think Mark brings up a really good point. Something that I've felt too when I started this work was that we're all in our groups and everybody's doing good work, but we have, so many issues that we're all working on, and is there a way for us to get better coordinated and support each other in a better, more cohesive fashion? And I really think Lori and the League has done a tremendous job of helping us as, really, Lori is a tireless advocate. And I think we have all, this is just my opinion, having done this now for 6 or 7 years, I feel that we have become even stronger and more coalesced as environmental advocates. And I think we've all also been very much obviously aware, as you all are, about the dire issues that our legislators are dealing with the budget and things like that, as well as the dire situation of climate change. And so for me personally, I feel, and you may all disagree, I feel like as environmental advocates, we've done better in the last couple of years, really not having 100 issues per se that we're trying to run, but really thinking very strategically, even if it's kind of out of our normal boundaries of where we work. I may spend less time on toxics, for example, because I know it's not the highest of priorities right now. Maybe water is. So how can we be helpful? And I just feel like that's been positive for us as a state, and particularly going into a short session, I think it really is important for us all as advocates to think about how can we support these top, 3 area issues, not to say that another issue is not as important, but just to be really thinking about how you can plug in. And Lou reminded me that we all send out action alerts on things that we're working on. So if you sign up for our emails and things like that and get those, even that's a helpful way that you can stay plugged in and advance an issue that you may care about that may not be a top priority that gets past this session per se.
Yeah, and you actually have in your package the 350 notes for how to work with legislators, and you can certainly use that as a guide. Onward and upward.
Yes, thank you. Anyone who has not spoken, got any brief one-line comment?
Hi all, thanks for coming. Is that good enough? You can reach out, I think it's been repeated on and on, to any of us. And as Gail said, some of the organizations are on that pink sheet. Lori and her great organization of LCV, 350, Sierra Club, Clean Water Action, most certainly, Lou Birch's organization. Many of them are already listed. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're all willing to help. It's no reason you go alone on this path.
Thank you. All right, my final 2 words: nurture yourself and everybody around you. Thank you.
Hello, I'm J. Stan McCauley, and I'm exploring a run for mayor of the city of Hartford in the 2019 election. It's undeniable that Hartford has many challenges. However, I believe that our residents are our strength. The question is, do you believe, like I do, in the potential of Hartford? You see the many assets the city has, but do you wonder, as I do, why we are still struggling to move ahead? Do you wonder why the solutions being offered to us just don't seem to get the job done? Well, creating a vibrant city begins with you. We have incredible people who live in the city, who have great solutions to Hartford's biggest challenges. But you don't always have a platform to have your ideas heard, let alone given an opportunity to co-create solutions that work for you, that work for us, that work for Hartford. Hartford's journey will be bumpy, and we'll continue to face highs and lows that challenge us to work smarter and come together as a community that is willing to capitalize on the power of our collective diversity of thought. The challenges facing Hartford will require each of us to act, whether in small ways or big ones. If you're with us on this journey, give me a call at 860-944-9797 and host a listening event for me. Invite a few of your friends so we can explore the possibilities together for a better Hartford.
What's going on? Oh, baby. What's really going on?
Well, I think that under the national administration, I think that environmental issues are under attack, and I want to do my part to put a stop to it.
Hi, I'm Alex Rodriguez. I'm the lead promoter of CHISPA Connecticut under the League of Conservation Voters, and I'm here today to gather amongst my peers, amongst many communities in Connecticut, so that we can address the environmental issues this coming legislative session. As you may know, climate change disproportionately affects many people, especially in urban areas. One way that CHISPA itself has come about the issue of climate change is through our Clean Buses for Healthy Niños campaign. We are working to get electric buses out on the road as the new standard because we believe that children should be breathing clean air on their way going to school and on their way home. So I'm really looking forward to this session because I know that water management, energy development, and land conservation are amongst everybody's top priorities here. And I'm looking forward to lobby days with them at the Capitol, as well as the climate marches and rallies that we'll have this year. I look forward to seeing you all in the coming future.